comes the oil bailouts. On Tuesday, President Trump had promised on social media that he would be giving the $181 billion oil and gas industry a federal bailout. Now, this is after, of course, oil prices, oil futures had crashed to negative $0. Now, this is what he said on social media, and it got a lot of pushback. We will never let the great U.S. oil and gas industry down. I have instructed the Secretary of Energy and Secretary of the Treasury to formulate a plan which will make funds available so that these very important companies and jobs will be secured long into the future. Forgetting to add, of course, the planet will not be secured in the future because oil and gas continue to pollute the environment. But hey, climate change, we've forgotten about that whole thing because, we never really cared about it in the first place, if you remember the Trump administration. So we didn't care about that. But we do care about propping up the oil industry, which is what we've been trying to do, mainly for coal, but also the oil and gas industry, because, we care about oil profits. Those people give money to my campaign, after all. So now, as I reported yesterday, oil futures for May dropped below zero. This is the first time that's ever happened in the history of the United States, right? We've never had oil below $0. In places, there were basically producers that were paying to offload oil. So, of course, we've had an oil glut, and it makes it even worse now that we have coronavirus and no demand. So that's the problem, right? Oil and gas are struggling because there is no demand. Coronavirus has locked people down. So nobody's traveling. We're not taking planes. We're not driving around. Summer is usually the best time, of course, for, oil consumption. Because, again, a lot of people are traveling, taking vacations. Well, they're not doing that anymore. So you have no demand for oil. And so prices drop. Futures drop. And then, of course, interestingly enough, yes, we have had gas prices that have dropped, but not enough to reflect what's actually going on in the oil industry. And so there's that. Now, as I mentioned before, the oil industry is struggling now because of lack of demand. But you also have small businesses. Now, small businesses immediately ran out of their $350 billion fund passed by the CARES Act, right? So that set up billions of dollars to go to small businesses specifically. Now, not all small businesses got that money. There's stories of actually large corporations using loopholes to be able to get access to that small business money, not actual small businesses. And so now the fund has run dry, and Congress is talking about trying to pass more additional funding for the small businesses. Now, that coming legislation obviously has a lot of problems in the fact that it doesn't actually help the workers, right? And so you've got more of a corporate bailout fund as well involved in that. And so discussions on that piece of legislation have kind of stalled out a bit. So we don't know when help for small businesses is coming. Now, you also have hospitals and doctors' offices. They're in massive need of federal funding. They're running out of money. We need them right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and you have hospitals that are literally laying people off right now. In a pandemic, when they need people the most, because they don't have enough funding. So Congress does need to address that. But instead, here the Trump administration is prioritizing an oil bailout. And not only that, but you also have workers that are struggling. We got our some of us got our one-time $1,200 check. I have not. I don't know when I'm going to get a bailout, but I do know that if I do, or if and when I should say I get that $1,200, that's it. That's all we're going to get. In this time of economic upheaval, That's all that workers are going to get. So we need a bailout, but instead, let's bail out the oil industry. Huge problem. Huge problem. So now a lot of people chimed in on this on Twitter. Let's start with some responses here. Christopher Zildo says, "What about capitalism? Isn't that supposed to dictate investment? We need to be investing in clean renewable energy. We have a finite supply of oil, just like COVID-19 and the Republican Party cannot forward think, plan at all beyond their own interests and donors, profit over people." So look, when I broke the story about oil yesterday, I said essentially the same thing. Hey, why don't we let oil fail and start actually investing in renewable energy? Let's get rid of the oil industry. We don't need it anymore. Let's take this opportunity to actually invest in something better, right? So now other people have pointed out that we give billions to the oil industry already. Brian Tyler Cohen says, and there it is, a bailout for the oil industry, which is already subsidized by U.S. taxpayers. But sure, Trump's a populist. Well, he certainly is popular among the business community after giving them massive tax cuts and bailouts. So corporations love Donald Trump and love Republicans. Now, another user points out that Trump is going to bail out oil and gas companies while forcing states to slash services and fire countless civil servants. No, they're absolutely right. Again, we've seen hospitals laying people off. We've seen local governments that are laying people off. There are already people that are working remotely that are going to get cut, and they're going to add to the unemployment rolls. You have Megan saying, "Can someone please explain to me how oil and airlines get a government bailout, but somehow I'm expected to keep 6 months cash in savings?" Yeah, look, Mnuchin said that, hey, that $1,200 payment, that should last you about 10 months. Go ahead, and live on that for quite some time. We're not going to give you anything else. We might think about giving something else to you, but necessarily, we're going to focus on corporations. So yeah. Eric Reef says, will the bailout for big oil be finalized before or after everyone's May rent is due? Hey man, rent's coming up. A $1,200 check, a lot of people are spending it on rent and food. What's going to happen now? You haven't canceled rent. Mortgages are still due. People got to pay the banks. Banks are getting bailed out, by the way. Banks are getting $1 trillion a day to get floated. And are they, not restricting credit? No, of course. They're totally restricting credit. They're making sure that, they reward their biggest customers with loans, but not regular people. And so you can't get a loan out there to protect yourself, and you're not getting help from the government. So what do you do? It's not a whole lot you can do. And yet we're worried about, of course, bailing out the oil industry. Now, Scott Menner makes a great point about the week, right? This week actually has Earth Day in it. And now on the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which is tomorrow, we're going to have the oil companies get bailed out. Now, Scott says they're on their knees, and it would be insanely foolish to hand them a bailout without strings attached, like public equity, and having them commit to going green in short order to, again, protect the environment. And not just protect the environment, to ensure human survival after we're done with this entire pandemic thing. Because, look, we can't go back to normal, right? This entire situation has really pointed out the flaws inherent in our society. And so why don't we take the opportunity while we can to actually make the world a better place after this? But unfortunately, the administration has shown they're not interested in making the world a better place. They're interested in making sure to help their buddies in oil and gas, who don't necessarily need a bailout at this point. Robert Reich, who was the former labor secretary under Bill Clinton, adds this. Oil prices have crashed below $0 a barrel. This is not a problem. We should not try to prop up oil prices. We should not bail out companies. We should accelerate our shift to solar, wind, and other non-fossil fuels. And another user points out how, yes, we're giving bailouts to oil corporations, right? Or any other large industry, but we're ignoring the post office, who, by the way, the post office will run out of money by summer. Donald Trump's refusing to fund the post office. Who's going to do rural mail deliveries? Who's going to do the things that the post office does if we don't have a post office? You can't count on FedEx, UPS, or any of the private carriers to do that. No, because mail delivery to rural areas, which services millions of people in this country, loses money. It's not profitable. Now, the post office is able to do that and is able to make a profit because they handle mail delivery. They handle package delivery for a lot of these larger companies like Amazon. So they do that delivery and they actually make money on it. Now, the problem with the post office, as I pointed out, is that they have to pre-fund certain benefits for their employees in a way that private companies don't, which has led them to have a gigantic liability. And that's losing them money. So if we get rid of the post office and we don't bail out the post office, but we bail out oil corporations, well, I mean, what message does that send? A public good, like the post office, is less important than helping our buddies on Wall Street and helping our buddies in the oil industry, who, by the way, gave millions of dollars to Donald Trump's campaign. So that's what it is. It's legalized corruption always. And in this time where people are suffering, to see them brazenly continue on with this corruption is just beyond the pale. Absolutely beyond the pale. I think if there was a manual on the correct actions to be taken on this crisis, Donald Trump either completely ignored it or he found it and decided to use the pages as toilet paper. Because right now, our government is doing the complete opposite of everything it should be doing. And it's going to have devastating consequences for the future. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.